My name is Phila Mayisela, original from the Eastern Cape. I live now in Cape Town. My frame of mind when I first arrived at Harmonie was one of extreme fatigue. I was at a point in my life where I was contemplating whether to actually leave the job that I'm in now, which is in government, in the public sector, or go back to private. Because I felt that I was so exhausted and I had reached my limits and I did not know where to go and what to do for that matter. So yeah, when I got to Harmonie, it was within that context. And in actual fact, I was even reluctant to come because I didn't feel like engaging with people because I just wanted to be by myself. First of all, growing up, I was in the music ministry and in the church, and a lot of hurt happened there. A lot was said to the extent that I ended up retreating and actually walking away from that ministry. And I refused to be involved with worship, and I had to be dragged to go out. And I hadn't realized that it was because of the spoken words over my life that were said during the time when I was active. And I think it was when I came back to In Harmonie that again the Holy Spirit just reminded me that I've given you a voice, I've given you an instrument for you to use as a warfare in this journey that I've called you to. And I've had to, then in actual fact, he even reminded me where that hurt took place, when, and I could even recall where, when, who. And I had to just in the chapel, one of the evenings as we were having a time of reflection, just go back, go before the Lord and say, I apologize, I am sorry, and actually even go to the extent of forgiving the people. And in actual fact, that opened up a whole new world for me again to openly worship God and to step into my calling as a worship leader. Prior to that moment, I didn't want to do anything to do with leading worship, but it was actually here at In Harmonie with the unction of the Holy Spirit that he took me back, and he got me to a point of realizing that it's actually not about me, but I had to actually even forgive before he could even release me. My story, very briefly, I did not grow up with my dad. I grew up with my mother and my grandmother, and my father was not in my life for the longest of time. I only got to meet him in 1993, just before the general elections, because he was a political activist. And I remember in that time, even when I started meeting and engaging with him, I felt, I don't know you, dude. So you want to connect with me? Why? I've been okay all my life without you, but it's great that I'm meeting you now. Wonderful. And I just didn't want to build that relationship. And it didn't matter how much he tried or how hard he tried, but I just would not let him in. And it was actually during one of the visits here, yet again, where I was actually challenged to go back and understand that he is my father, he is my dad. I have to reach out to him. And actually taking that step of taking out my phone and being me reaching out to him, it felt like, well, I don't think I can do this. But just coming out of one of the sessions, I was really encouraged because Jesus speaks of the spirit of reconciliation, and I had to make and take that step. And as I can say, the rest is history. We have reconnected, and it's just been really wonderful. The funny story is that in that moment where I was feeling a bit anxious and fatigued, one of the mornings I decided to just, a very early morning, I usually either when I come here go for a run, but that morning I decided to come to the garden and just to sit in and listen, and without anything I just came, sat, and it was so refreshing, to the point where I felt so encouraged. In actual fact, I actually gave this testimony after my first session here, that I felt and heard this sort of like audible voice that said, lean in. And I remember looking around, I'm like, what was that? What does that even mean? And it just kept on saying, lean in, lean in, lean in, lean in. And I remember opening my eyes and thinking, oh, okay, lean in, leaning in. So that's when, as I went to breakfast that morning, that word kept ringing in my head, lean in, leaning, leaning. And I sort of like parked it because I did not know what to do with it. And in Harmonie, what in Harmonie does for me is it forces me to pause and reflect. Sometimes we get so busy in our lives and believing that we're doing the things that God has called us to do, but we forget to actually focus and tune in to God. And coming back to In Harmonie, it always feels like a recalibration of sorts for me, because again, I'm able to just pause, reflect, and remember who my compass is, and remember to again go back to God and lean in to Him. And it just encourages me, and it gives me strength again. So if anything, just to get out of just the hustle and bustle, to just be with the Lord and listen, and purposefully and intentionally listen to Him, I would come back here any other day given the opportunity.